To start this lesson, let's do a quick overview of a typical laptop. And we'll start with the basic components of this system. Here we see the display, which is blank right now. We'll boot up the laptop in a little bit. Above that, we have a webcam and little tiny microphones. Underneath here, we have the speakers for the laptop. And here is the power button. Underneath that, we have the keyboard. And one thing I'd like to point out here is the F1 through F12 keys. These are the function keys, but they have secondary functions on this laptop. For example, this is the F2 key right here. And normally that would get you into, say, the BIOS, and it might do other things within your operating system, but it has a secondary function. And to activate that secondary function, we'd press this FN key, the function key. So we'd press this and F2 at the same time. That key's secondary function is to reduce the brightness of the display. Another example, the F12 key over here has a secondary function of toggling the wireless connection. So it'll enable or disable the wireless. So if you're ever troubleshooting wireless, you can check that, press the function key, and press that wireless key and see if the wireless turns on in your notification area or elsewhere in your operating system. Beneath that, we have the touchpad, which you can use to single tap, double tap, swipe, or click. And it also comes with buttons on the bottom, left and right, to emulate a mouse's buttons. And that's the main components of this particular laptop. Let's go ahead and take a look at the ports that we have on this system. So we'll close this and we'll take a look here. And so to start, we'll start on the left side. Here we have the power connection, which is for our AC adapter, which we'll plug in a minute. Here we have an RJ45 port, and that's for the wired Ethernet connection, which we'll also plug in, connect to the wired local area network. And here we have two USB ports. These are USB version 3 or higher, and we know that because they are blue. And then here we have an exhaust vent. Very important to keep these clear and make sure you're getting the heat out of the laptop. And turn it around here to the right side. Here we have an audio port that's a 1/8 inch TRS jack, which you can use with your headphones or headset. Here we have a USB port. This is black, so it's only 2.0. And then here we have an HDMI port for video, so we can connect an external monitor and get a second display going with this laptop. Over here, we have a lock port. And if you're going to use a cable lock with the laptop to secure it and keep it kind of stationary so it doesn't walk away, so to speak. On the front of the laptop, we have a couple lights, and these may be a little difficult to make out. But on the left, we have the charging light and power light. And on the right here, we have the Wi-Fi light. Tells you if Wi-Fi is working. On the back, this has a battery, and it's secured by 2 screws. And then we have lots of other screws that keep the bottom plate in place, and some other vents for releasing heat from the laptop. We'll be taking apart this laptop as we go through the lessons and showing how to upgrade the system and troubleshoot some of the parts that are within here. And so, for example, this is actually a much older laptop. It's probably 5 or 6 years old right now, but I still use it. And this particular one runs Windows 10 Professional, and it runs it fairly well because I upgraded it. I upgraded the hard drive to a faster solid-state drive, and then I increased the RAM and put in faster RAM. I actually have another one of these systems, and it's the same laptop, basically, but it runs Fedora. And so this particular system, if we look here, this is a Toshiba Satellite E45 B4100. So if I ever need parts or if I need to troubleshoot this system, or look at the documentation, I know the exact model number for this particular brand. Let's go ahead and boot up this system. And the first thing I want to do is plug in the power. And I've already plugged in the other side there. And we'll plug in the wired Ethernet patch cable. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the power button. But before I do that, I want to let you know what I'm doing. First, I'm going to boot into the BIOS of this system so I can show you a typical BIOS on a laptop. And to do that on this system, we press the F2 key. So you just need the F2 key for this. Other systems, it might be F1, or it could be delete, or perhaps another keystroke. Depends on the manufacturer and the BIOS that's being used. So I'm going to press the power button and immediately press the F2 key to attempt to get into the BIOS. And repeatedly press that F2 key, and we're in. And you can see we're in the Toshiba setup utility. They actually don't make these laptops anymore, but laptops like these that are older may be very beneficial to you for the learning process. You can find inexpensive laptops within online auction websites, on the classifieds, and so on. And perhaps they might work fine as is, or you may want to upgrade them. So it's an inexpensive way to really try and educate yourself with the hardware and with some software as well. And you can see here that this has an Intel Core i5 5200 CPU, which is a 2.2 gigahertz CPU. I've increased the RAM to 16 gigabytes. And you can see it says 16,384 megabytes. That is 16 gigabytes. And I've changed the hard drive to a Samsung SSD, a solid state drive. And I'll show that process in another video. And we have lots of options here. We can modify security, power management, advanced options, and so on and so on. Change the time and date here if we need to. All that is done in the BIOS. And the BIOS is the underlying system underneath of Windows or whatever other operating system you're running, like Linux. So it's important that this is configured properly in order for your operating system to work correctly. I'm not going to make any changes here. I just wanted to show it, but we'll be showing this more in future videos. So for now, I'm just going to press the escape key to close out. And it tells you what to do here in the legend at the bottom right. If you need help, press F1. That's the universal help key. If you want the defaults for this system, press F9. To save any changes you make and exit, press F10. Or to just get out without saving anything, just press escape. And I'm going to do that now. And when we do so, we'll say yes to exit discarding changes, even though I didn't make any changes. Press enter, and it should boot into Windows. All right, and here is the Windows system. At this point, I'm going to log in. I'm just going to press the enter key and type in my password. And even for an older laptop, it booted into Windows pretty quickly. It took longer probably to log in than it did to boot up the system. If your profile is large, it could take a long time to log in regardless of what the system is. But you'll notice that this is an older system, but it actually booted Windows pretty quick. All right, so we'll get rid of these messages. And at this point, we are in Windows 10 Professional. And now I'm going to go and share this screen off so that we can see it a little bit easier and show a couple things within Windows and a couple of things that you want to look for in any operating system that you're working in. So I've shared my Windows 10 system so that you can see the screen and you can see everything a little bit bigger here. And I always recommend that you get to know the operating system. Navigate through the system and get to know all of its parts, especially these four components. First, files. Know how to get to the files and how to open them. Second, settings. Know how to get to your settings and how to configure your system. Third, a web browser. Make sure that you know how to use at least one web browser, the built-in one within the system. And fourth, how to use the command line. whatever that command line program is for your operating system. So let's show these four on this Windows 10 system as an example. And we'll start with files. In Windows, we use File Explorer, and you can see there's an icon here for it. That's this little folder. But if you don't know where something is, you can go through the Start menu and try to search for it, or, and this might be your best bet because you're going to be working in a lot of operating systems and a lot of different applications, get to know how to use the search tool. So here's the search tool. If we click on that and we type File Explorer, it'll bring up that File Explorer app, and we can just click on it to bring it up. And then we can work with our files and folders. So that's the first thing. Make sure you can get to the files on your system. The second thing is to make sure you can get to the settings. In Windows 10, there's two places to do your configurations. There's settings and there's the control panel. And let's start with settings. If we go to the search once again and just type settings, there we go. And here's our settings app. If I click on that, it brings up all the various settings on Windows 10. And we're going to go through settings and all of these categories in more depth in a later video. We'll also show other ways to open the settings app. But the second option in Windows 10 is the control panel. And again, a variety of ways to open that. But if we go to the search once again and just type control panel, you'll see that app. And open that up, and you'll see all the various icons here and different things that you can do in the control panel. Now you may say, why have two different sets of configuration settings? Well, the control panel is the older location and settings is the newer location. And Windows has been slowly moving and gravitating from the control panel over to settings. But for now, you're probably going to need to know both when you're working in a system. Okay, and the fourth option is the command line. Now in Windows 10, we have three options. You have the command prompt and the PowerShell in Windows, and then you can access those with another program called Terminal. And so you want to be able to find these. Now again, variety of ways to search for these tools, but the best way is to just use the search utility. So if we click on that, we can type in command prompt and you'll see the command prompt app, or you can type in PowerShell and you'll see the PowerShell app. And the third option is to run the terminal. Inside Terminal, you can run PowerShell or command prompt and a variety of other things as well. We'll talk about all of that more later. But for now, let's just open PowerShell because I think that's what you're going to want to use the most in the field. So we'll press enter for PowerShell. And you can see that brings up a command line for us. And we can do whatever it is we need to do here, whether it's connect to websites externally, ping them to see if they exist and see if we have a network connection, or run the dir command, or whatever else we need to do. And again, we'll spend a lot of time in the command line through the videos in this course, but I just want to make sure that you know how to open all of these various apps in Windows or in any other operating system you're working in.